Welcome to Veranda IAS. In today's current affairs session of polity, we are going to study about compulsory licensing. So, a term which you would have heard across this pandemic time. So, the learning objective of today's is to discuss the compulsory licensing, outline the reasons for compulsory licensing in news, why it is in news recently, list the conditions to be fulfilled by the applicant, and discuss the global perspective on compulsory licensing. It is acceptable in India, but is it acceptable across the globe? So particularly Western nations, do they endorse this concept called as compulsory licensing? So we will study that in today's video. So first, what is compulsory licensing? So compulsory licensing is a term that used to refers a license or authorization granted by the government to an applicant. So there are three members involved here. One is government and another one is applicant, for the purpose of manufacturing, utilizing and selling a patented product, which means someone has invented a product and they hold the patent right of that product. So there is another person in the play, that is person or company or firm which holds the patent rights. So it is actually a license or authorization granted by government to any other person, that is an applicant, to manufacture and sell a patented product which normally another person would not be able to do so. Only the patented person, a person holding patent rights, will be able to manufacture and sell. But during the times of emergency, the government, what they can do, they can authorize any other persons to manufacture that product for which another person is holding patent rights. A method without the approval of patentee. This is what important. So this is what called as compulsory licensing. This compulsory licensing was mentioned in Indian Patents Act of 1970. So Indian Patents Act of 1970 speaks about this compulsory licensing. This concept will not be acceptable to the certain countries in the West, because they value the intellectual properties more than the public welfare. So in June 2020, the CPI Marxist Party proposed that government should provide compulsory licensing. Obligatory licensing is nothing but another term for compulsory licensing. So the government should provide compulsory license for manufacturing of a generic version of remdesivir, which is used to treat people with COVID-19. So what is actually remdesivir? Remdesivir is a antiviral medication. It is not a vaccine. It is not a vaccine. It is a medication. So vaccine is a preventive one. It prevents from the occurrence of any particular disease, but this is a medication, which means it is used to treat the people after the disease comes in. So it is an antiviral medication which is actually developed in the wake of Ebola to treat Ebola virus. Since this remdesivir is highly effective in treating COVID-19, this was in great demand across the globe. So the CPI Marxist Party is asking the government of India to issue compulsory licensing to produce the generic versions of this remdesivir drug. The government is reportedly considering in invoking the clause 92 of the Indian Patent Act. Actually, the clause 92 of the Indian Patent Act is the one which speaks about compulsory licensing, which empowers it to award compulsory licensing to Indian producers in order to make a more cost generic equivalent of remdesivir. Remdesivir is a product of Gilead Life Sciences Limited, who holds the patent right, and the company also used to sell this remdesivir drugs in a very huge margin of profit. So that is why it is a very costlier one. So if a generic version is made, if a compulsory licensing is issued to any other Indian manufacturer, then the cost of the drug, a life-saving drug, will be reduced to a great extent. According to the media sources, the United States, which is stockpiling all pharmaceuticals deemed to be beneficial in battling the pandemic, this is called as vaccine nationalism. If any products is seem to be beneficial, then what they will do? They will sign a pre-purchase agreement with any pharmaceutical company, and they will procure all the doses, all the products coming out of the factory. So, as per the media sources, the US, which is stockpiling all pharmaceuticals deemed to be beneficial in battling the pandemic, which are all appears to be helping this COVID-19 disease, has purchased Gilead's full supply of remdesivir for the next 3 months. So, this is from the year of June 2020. So, July, August, September. What happens if a single country in earth procures every supply of remdesivir, which is touted as a miracle drug in treating COVID-19? The rest of the globe will be suffocated. So, this is why a party, CPI Marxist in India, is asking Indian government to issue compulsory licensing to allow other manufacturers to produce the same drug without the approval of Gilead Life Sciences. Gilead is holding the globe hostage with its patent monopoly. Gilead is holding the entire world as hostage with its patent monopoly by demanding hundreds of times of cost of the drug. So, they are selling the drug in the market with huge profit, huge margin of profit. So, this is a pandemic time. So, in this time, some extraordinary measures has to be taken to combat this pandemic. So, such one extraordinary measure is issuing of compulsory licensing, but as of now, as of till date, Government of India has not issued compulsory licensing. If Government of India is issuing such compulsory licensing, it will adversely affect the business sentiments. It will adversely affect the pharmaceutical companies who are going to invest in India. So, that is why they are weighing their options. Government of India is weighing their options. Next, what are the conditions to be fulfilled by an applicant before filing application for compulsory licensing? First, the application may be filed at any time after 3 years from the date of patent sealing. So, initial 3 years it should not be disturbed. That company which developed the drug should have monopoly. It is allowed to have monopoly. This is as per Indian Patents Act of 1970. So, for initial 3 years that company is allowed to enjoy their monopoly in their invention. After 3 years only, an application has to be made for any compulsory licensing. And the next ground is reasonable public needs for the patented invention have not been met. There is a drug, there is a product, and there is a need, but due to this cost mismatch, such public needs have not been met so far. This is one of such ground. And the third ground, the patented innovation is not commercially available to the public at a reasonable price. So, the doses, 12 doses of remdesivir costs thousands, about 10,000. So, is it available for any common man, any poor man? It is not available, it is not at all available at reasonable prices. Only certain state governments in India are procuring remdesivir at market prices, and they are selling it in a subsidized price. If that option is not there, then remdesivir will not be available at a very nominal rate. So, these are the conditions on which a compulsory licensing can be granted. Section 92 of the Indian Patent Act states that controller of patents may issue compulsory license suo motu without any application, without any person appealing for compulsory license in response to a notification made by central government if there is any national emergency, that is in the case of health emergency, or if there is any great urgency or in circumstances of public non-commercial usage. This remdesivir is very important in battling what? COVID pandemic. There is another drug, hydrochloroquine, which will be very much important drug for treating malaria. If there is any severe malaria outbreak, malaria is not an epidemic, there is not going to be any outbreak, but I am saying for a hypothetical situation. If there is any malaria outbreak, then that can be considered as the great urgency or national emergency. Then at that time, the drug hydrochloroquine can be, the patents can be loosened, compulsory licensing can be issued to any other manufacturing company of India. So, This is compulsory licensing. It finds mention in Indian Patents Act itself. So as per Act, Indian government can issue compulsory licensing. What is a global perspective? What other countries would think? Compulsory licensing is a highly contentious topic. Western countries are not supportive of this concept. Numerous poor nations place a premium on compulsory licensing due to the scarcity and unaffordability of medicines, and they continue to award an increasing number of forced licenses. This is in the case of poor countries. The wealthy countries, on the other hand, the wealthy countries of Europe and the United States of America oppose this stance. As I said in the earlier itself, they give more importance to the intellectual property rights than the public welfare, since they are at most capitalistic in nature. An individual, a business person, an innovator's idea, a profit has to be safeguarded at any cost. So these Western countries in the United States of America oppose this stance, claiming that it would make innovation more difficult for the pharmaceutical corporations. So all they think about is pharmaceutical corporations' welfare, well-being. What is at stake here? The public's health is at stake here. But this is their stance. There is an agreement called TRIPS, Trade Related Intellectual Property Rights Agreement on TRIPS. So there is a Doha Declaration. This TRIPS is an initiative of WTO. The Doha Declaration of WTO states that countries are free to issue compulsory licensing. So as of now, legally India does not have any bar, any impediment in issuing compulsory licensing. But the governments of the day will differ from issuing compulsory licensing, as it would hurt the sentiments of business community, particularly the pharmaceutical corporations who are setting shops in India for their product manufacturing. So that is all for today's LA students. In this LA, we have studied about compulsory licensing and why this compulsory licensing in news lately, conditions to be fulfilled by the applicant for granting compulsory licensing, and at last we have also studied about global perspective, what other countries, what Western countries thinks about this compulsory licensing, what is the WTO's stand on this compulsory licensing. So that is all for today's class. We will meet in another polity session. Until then, keep watching. Thank you very much.